Hello and welcome to your fourth session of Achieve Your Best Self. In this program, we'll be looking at stress, describing what it is, how it affects you, and some tools for managing it. So, why should we look at stress? Isn't body composition just about calories in needing to be less than calories out? Well, being a member of this program, you already know that there is more to our bodies than that. This stress management is important precisely because with unchecked chronic stress, there is an imbalance in hormones that not only will affect your mood, your sleep, and your general well-being, but also your ability to lose weight. As this beautiful quote here summarizes, one of the best lessons you can learn in life is to master how to remain calm. And that is the key, is the word master. The funny thing is, I really stressed about putting the stress presentation because my thinking was, who am I to talk about stress and stress management? But to be completely honest with you, it's a journey that we're all on and we're going to be on for the rest of your life because it is about mindfulness. It's about finding alignment between your thoughts, your emotions, and actions. And it isn't about me just providing you with some basic tools and here you go, try this and try that, and that should take care of your stress. It is not as simple as that, as much as, you know, we may hear in different social media, in the news, etc., or in books, try this to lower your stress or do this to manage your stress. It is, however, not as simple as that. So my goal for this program is to provide you with some of the basics, and if nothing else, to just prime your brain and put you in a state of mind where you can go in with some curiosity with regards to, okay, what is it in my life that's causing stress and how can I best manage that? Um, so firstly, we're going to look at stress and the fact that it's actually a good thing. There's nothing wrong with stress physiologically, evolutionarily. It's been our savior. So it's not a terrible thing. Second, we'll look at the practice of mindfulness, or in other words, having a non-judgmental presence with self-acceptance and self-compassion. And that is important with regards to warding off the damage that comes with chronic stress. Thirdly, alignment with your highest purpose, which with practice can help eliminate multitasking, guilt, and perceived stress. And I realize this is not a one-day fix, it's an ongoing daily life goal. And lastly, a number of tips to help you get by until you have number two and three firmly consolidated practices. Okay, so let's talk about stress. What is stress? It's usually described as the fight or flight and sometimes the freeze response. In our society, we tend to freeze because we have nothing to fight and nothing to flight. But evolutionarily, it's been the response that has been protective. Okay, so it is basically a reaction that has brought humanity to where we are now. However, in our current society of sedentary lifestyles and high mental and emotional stress, the physical response can sometimes be a little extreme. It can be unnerving and can bring about certain unhealthy habits. The key then is to first understand our body, and second, to learn to utilize this very powerful response in our favor. All right, so what is this response? How does this stress response serve us? Well, here's an example. Let's say you have a project whose due date is coming up at work and you begin feeling the urgency. The stress response may then kick in and increase your heart rate, increase your focus and attention, and put you into a laser focused mode to get the job done. Now, what's the problem with this then? Problem comes about when any issue, even imagined, puts our body into the stress response. So what are some of these imaginary scenarios? Well, they're mostly fears, worries, negative self-talk, and false negative beliefs that, instead of serving us, tend to hinder us. So now I've mentioned chronic unchecked stress. What do I mean by that? It is when the stress response does not shut off, so it continues on for days and weeks and even months in some cases. And that is when stress and the stress response becomes unhealthy. When the adrenal glands secrete high amounts of the cortisol hormone, these are powerful chemicals which not only inhibit digestion, reproduction, growth, tissue repair, but also disrupt the immune response and cause inflammatory reactions in the body that in the long term can basically shut down a lot of the healthy functions of the body and cause chronic illness. So here's a graph that describes what chronic unchecked stress is like. The blue being the normal is a normal cortisol curve. So first thing in the morning when you wake up between 5 to 7 a.m. is when you have the highest cortisol released by your body. The cortisol allows your body to wake up, to have energy, and to have the focus you need to get through your day and get your work done. And it begins to plummet by midday, early afternoon, and by evening when your body is ready for sleep. It's at its lowest amount, and it needs to be at that very low amount so that then other hormones that help with your body's rejuvenation and repair can take over. So growth hormone, remember, does not get produced when cortisol is high. Okay, so growth hormone is a hormone that helps build muscles and that helps repair and rejuvenate tissues and cells. Um, so then you can see why that can become unhealthy when, as the red curve shows, cortisol is unchecked, it continues to remain high. What that means is that that growth hormone that puts your body in fat burning mode and that helps repair your tissues does not ever get released, at least not in the amounts that it needs to. And this can, over time, lead to basically a complete mess of the cortisol curve where you're waking up feeling unrefreshed, you're exhausted, you have no energy when you wake up in the morning. Sometimes by the early afternoon, late afternoon, you begin to get, a second wind and you're like, oh, now I have the energy I need to get through my evening. But then what happens is that that cortisol curve being so skewed leads to you not having restful, refreshing, rejuvenating sleep. And as a result, you wake up in the next morning feeling again tired, exhausted. Now, then, if the chronic stress response can have such damaging effects, then why do I want you to feel that or understand that stress is actually a good thing? Well, it is actually a false and negative belief to think that stress is bad, unhealthy, and bad thing. There have been studies done that have shown that people who, irregardless of their amount of stress, of the degree of stress they're in, if their outlook on stress is positive and optimistic, they actually do not get chronic diseases that's expected to come of stress. Whereas groups of people who, same level of stress as the other group, but believe that stress is a bad thing and it's not good and they should try to completely get rid of it out of their lives, tend to end up with chronic conditions related to stress. Okay, so do your best, and my goal here is to help you understand that stress is not bad. It's how you respond to it, how you perceive it, that can have damaging effects. If you're not able to shut down the stress response is when you get into the chronic unchecked stress mode that can have damaging effects down the road. However, there's also the positive stress cycle where, whether with the stress you take a positive behavioral response to address that stress, so you take action to do something about it, or you change your self-talk. So if you've been thinking negatively about this event or or whatever it is that you're worried about and anxious about, if you can speak positively to yourself about it, have some compassion and be non-judgmental and be present in the moment as opposed to trying to avoid what it is that you need to deal with that's causing you stress, then you put yourself in the positive stress cycle. And that is a good thing. Okay, now to just drive this point a little further, eustress or good stress as defined in the scientific community is the positive mental response to stress that is healthy or gives one a feeling of fulfillment or other positive feelings. Eustress is not defined by the type of stressor, but rather how one perceives that stressor. For example, you could see a stressor as a negative threat, or you can see it as a positive challenge. The difference between good and bad stress is this. With good stress, you know you'll be okay. There's no fear associated with the stress. Although you have the same physiological responses of sweating, palpitations, shallow breaths, focused attention, etc. But you know you'll get through it and you will push through. So for example, for one person, riding a roller coaster can be exciting, it could be exhilarating, and they know they'll be okay at the end of it, even though they may be sweating and their heart may be palpitating while they're on the ride. They know they'll be okay and they can actually take pleasure from that activity. Whereas for someone else who does not enjoy roller coasters, that same experience of sweating, palpitations, and shallow breaths just can be unnerving and damaging. Okay, that is then unhealthy stress. And you can use this in many examples. For example, in a meeting you have at work, you could see it as basically a threat, or you could see it as something, an engagement in something that may be challenging for you, but you may perceive challenge as a positive and healthy concept that helps you become a better person, um, better at your job, or whatever challenge you may be faced with. Now, with the roller coaster example, we talked about fear. So someone who's afraid of roller coasters may not enjoy it. And this fear response can determine whether a stressor is then a eustress or a good stress or a bad stress. Okay, so but you have to realize fear is an evolutionary gift. It's part of it's inherent in us. There's nothing you can do about that part of your brain that registers fear. It's genetic, it's evolutionary. However, in our times today, it shows up in situations in which we don't want to be fearful, but we need to use that situation to grow personally and professionally. So, how can you then experience intense fear and try to perform anyway? Well, to get to this point, it's important to remember that your body is geared to have these physiological responses to threats of danger. If your body feels threatened, it will react. You may, however, choose to identify with those reactions and say, "Oh no, I'm scared," and you equate yourself with those emotions, or you could observe your reactions, noting what is happening physiologically to your body. Perhaps you might think, wow, my body is jumping around like crazy. My heart is racing. My hands are shaking. Wow, how interesting. Once you move into the observer state, the subjective experience of fear then becomes diminished, even though you may still stay physiologically aroused. So know that your stress reaction is always good. It's always preparing you to act. What is, however, damaging is identifying yourself with those physiological states or that emotion. All right, so just to bring some light into this presentation, you may be thinking, well, if the caveman diet is what we're genetically programmed for, why not the caveman stress response of fight or flight? Well, the truth is that it does not serve us in our current modern world. We're not running away from bears. We don't have to fight an animal or run away from it, so it doesn't serve us well. But unfortunately, evolutionarily, there are some caveman approaches to stress management that are ingrained in our brains but do not serve us well. And one of those is putting something in your mouth. Now, you may feel better when you put something in your mouth and it helps distract you from the stress. The downside, however, is that the threat doesn't go away. So you have to keep stimulating your mouth or even your ears or your eyes, something to distract yourself. But unfortunately, usually these distractors have side effects and they in turn cause more anxiety and further need for distraction because you still have not dealt with the threat head on. Now, the second caveman approach to stress management is to trust others to manage a threat. So again, this is an evolutionary way that humanity has dealt with stresses with regards to relationships, whether it's with family or coworkers. This triangular relationship where instead of dealing with the threat head on, so it's a relationship that's not going well, that you need to address, there's a problem, but instead of going to the source of the problem, you go to someone else to help you deal with your problem. So you let go of the control you have in dealing with it and you give it up to someone else. And if you're finding that relationship stress is one of the stressors in your life, two great books by Harriet Lerner. She's written many others as well, but the two I've read and I would highly recommend to anyone in any kind of a stressful relationship, again, whether with your significant other, even your children or your parents and your coworkers. Great practical tips in this book on how to deal with your relationships head on instead of forming a triangular relationship where that threat or that issue continues to fester and it just ends up causing more and more stress and anxiety in your life. So quickly, just want to mention something with regards to the first caveman approach to stress management, which was putting something in your mouth. There's a false belief that tends to circulate in social media, in books, in print, even within different therapists and counselors that, hey, you're feeling stressed, it's okay, have a little snack and it's going to boost your mood and help alleviate some of your stress. Unfortunately, however, food does not take away stress. It just distracts from stress and it does not boost mood. It may initially, in the short term, help you feel better because of the sugars that are going to circulate that are going to boost some hormones, but in the long term, it will cause further anxiety and worsen your health outcomes. And the reason I wanted to bring this to your attention is that a lot of our habits that are not serving us are actually perpetuated by popular media. For example, books, TV, internet, Facebook posts and infograms and that kind of thing that provide nothing but fluff. And if you're familiar with this kind of thing on the internet, for a website or a Facebook page owner, all they're concerned about is traffic. And so they're going to make their post look pretty and make it something that the readers want to see and want to hear, regardless of whether that fact that they're presenting is actually a fact or not. Okay, so when posts provide the audience what the audience wants to see, that post will get shared, it'll become popular, regardless of the truth in that post, and that is good for the person or the organization that initially started circulating it, but not good for us. So be very cautious of what you see in social media. So do not follow fluff nutrition and diet advice. There's truth to some, and it's not all harmful, but it can be hard to decipher truth from false. So take everything with a grain of salt. Okay, so now that we know what stress is and what good and bad stress are, how can you live a less stressful life? How can you deal better with your stress? And one of the best tools for managing stress is actually mindfulness. Mindfulness is described as a state of active, open attention in the present. When you're mindful, you observe your thoughts and feelings from a distance. Remember, we talked about this, without judging them good or bad. So instead of letting your life pass you by, mindfulness means living in the moment and being awake to your present experience. So we'll quickly go through some tips with regards to how to become more mindful in your daily, everyday, day-to-day life. Firstly, to always do your best to be present in the moment. So instead of thinking about the past or worrying about the future, just to remain open to how things unfold in the present moment. So you also want to be fully present of um, your physical state. So what are you feeling in your body? What are you seeing, hearing, doing right now? So instead of being all in your head, to actually be physically present with yourself in your environment, whether you're reading a book, listening to this presentation, washing dishes, gardening, whatever you may be doing, you can bring mindfulness to that activity by getting in touch with your physical senses, most importantly. Next, it's important to be open to experience. So rather than dreading and shutting out your own feelings and experiences because you don't think you can handle them, you welcome them with curiosity. So any thoughts or feelings that naturally arise, you know they're merely sensations in the moment and that the next moment can be different. You also don't categorize your thoughts and feelings as good or bad, or try to change them or feel compelled to act on them. And you realize that all feelings have a purpose, whether to protect you from danger or to open you to love. You watch and accept whatever arises in consciousness with an open mind, and you extend this non-judging attitude to other people and things also. Next, you want to practice maintaining an even keel and not getting too swept up in life's highs and lows, realizing that life is a cycle and you can't see the whole picture at any one moment. So remember that example of the spiral? You're not moving up in a straight line, it's a constant spiral. And so sometimes you may end up in the same spot with the same obstacle or challenge that you thought, oh, I dealt with this already. I thought this was over. But, life sometimes needs to make sure that we really learned our lesson. And so it may keep presenting us with the same challenge until we fully understood it. So, do not get too excited when you've overcome an obstacle. Know that, hey, you may be presented with this again. And do not get too down and low when you are dealing with a challenge, knowing that you can and will get through this also as you have in the past. Next, self-compassion. You must, deal gently and kindly and patiently with yourself and others. So first, you need to extend this self-love and compassion to yourself so that you can genuinely extend this self-compassion to others as well. If you don't have a non-judgmental and compassionate attitude towards yourself, it's actually very difficult to have it towards other people and other things. And lastly, remember, just like anything, mindfulness takes practice. So think of it as a muscle. You want to develop an observing mind that watches your own daily experiences, that notices your automatic patterns, and helps you to gently redirect attention to the present moment. And that in itself is the beginning of growing a mindfulness muscle when you are able to bring yourself back to the present moment over and over and over, then it becomes a habit. The worst thing you can do is to be on automatic pilot where you operate mindlessly and you go about your days without really being aware of what you feel inside or what's around you. That can have very damaging effects. And so your goal is to go with the flow and say yes to the present moment. Again, instead of fighting what it is or worrying about the future or having regrets about the past, to just be in the moment. Okay, and next we're going to be talking about alignment with your highest purpose. Now, why do you need to align? Imagine this. You have just come home from a stressful day on the job. You don't have time to cook and you don't really have much energy to cook anyways. So you just munch on whatever you can find. You sit down in front of the TV to unwind, and before you know it, it's time for bed. Now, is this the type of life that is in alignment with your highest purpose and desire? I really doubt it. So, what do you need to do then in order to live a life that's in alignment with your desires and goals and highest purpose? The most important thing you can do is to be mindful again and remind yourself on a daily basis, perhaps, first thing in the morning when you wake up, to meditate on your goals, your purpose, what drives you, what motivates you, where you want to be, who is it that you want to be, and remind yourself of this every morning so that you live your life according to that ideal on a day-to-day basis. And again, this is just like mindfulness, a muscle that needs to come with practice. And I'll be truthfully honest, it's not easy. It's very easy to preach, not easy to do, I will admit. However, on days when I do live in alignment with my highest purpose and goal, a funny thing happens. It actually ends up being the most stress-free day ever. And so I know alignment is actually the best stress reliever. It's one way to stop yourself from getting pulled every which way, because we live in an age of information overload where you also have marketing forces that drive you to buy and buy, and they're doing what they can to instill fear in you so that you're more likely to buy their products. And there's also huge competition and feelings of lack as opposed to contentment and abundance. And so it is no wonder we're all so stressed, because the forces working against us are so strong. So why do you need to align? Again, because I believe it is the most effective way of banishing anxiety, worry, and fears that drive much of our perceived stress. All right, this has been a heavy presentation, and I do not claim to be no guru, but this much I know. No matter how much you strive, if your goals aren't aligned with your heart's desire, you're going to have a tough time reaching your goals. So what do you need to do? Well, as I said earlier, if you like meditating, spend a few minutes each day reminding yourself of your core values and desires and highest aspirations. If you prefer to write, journal daily, and again remind yourself of why you're living the life you have chosen. And if you aren't living the life that you want to be, well, begin seeking out resources that may help you bring about the necessary changes to make that happen. If this is something that you're comfortable in sharing with me in our one-on-one visits, please bring it to your next session and I can help brainstorm with you. And if nothing else, I can provide a sounding board and hopefully be able to link you to some resources that can help you. a beautiful quote here. When we align our thoughts, emotions, and actions with the highest parts of ourselves, we are filled with enthusiasm, purpose, and meaning. Life is rich and full. We have no thoughts of bitterness. We have no memory of fear. We are joyously and intimately engaged with our world. This is the experience of authentic power. So, here are some questions you can ask yourself to help you find what will bring about a more fulfilling and meaningful life for you. What are some of your core beliefs and values? Is it service? Is it uh, love, peace, unity? Which of these, or how is it that you are driven to do what you do every day? Second, what is your heart's desire? What is it that you really, really, really would like to have more of in your life? And third, what changes do you need to make to be on your journey to creating a fulfilling and meaningful life? Perhaps for you being in this program, a core value that has made you a participant is the belief that you can live a physically and mentally and spiritually healthy life, and you're going to do what you can to bring that about. It is your heart's desire to improve your vitality and energy, and you're using this resource then, perhaps among a few others, to help you achieve your goal. Now, the key here is to be laser focused on these desires and not try to multitask or to allow yourself to be pulled every which way. One way to do that is to align your thoughts, motives, and actions by meditating on these desires. First thing in the morning every day is best. This helps you to maintain a clear vision and stay focused while keeping fears and worries at bay. Now, the heavy stuff's over. Some basic tips to help you get by. We're going to look at self-soothing, vagus tone breaths, and what do the Japanese do to stay calm? And lastly, cognitive behavioral therapy. So, self-soothing are practices that are healthy coping strategies that do not involve damaging pleasures like drinking alcohol and smoking. So, those activities are self-soothing, but are damaging. Okay, so we're talking about typically healthy self-soothing activities like relaxation exercises, listening to music, taking a warm bath, reading, going for a walk, and whatever positive, nurturing activities you enjoy that can help you bring about a state of calm and recover from stress. However, I'll also mention that it's not always a good idea to self-soothe in order to avoid the arrival of a painful emotion. For example, let's say a good friend has announced that she's moving away to a faraway city. Now, every time you start thinking about her, you suppress your feelings of loss and grief by playing your guitar, let's say, or watching a video. This is an inappropriate use of self-soothing because it's an attempt to avoid fully experiencing normal feelings of loss and grief. The appropriate thing to do would be when you're ready to feel those emotions, I find a way to deal with those emotions as opposed to distracting yourself from them. Okay, so for another good example, if you're angry about being passed over for a promotion at work, an appropriate response instead of self-soothing might be to use that anger as motivation to dust off your resume and inquire about openings in other departments. So if you respond to the first twinge of anger by heading to the break room for a pastry, you might not get around to planning a positive active response. So self-soothing is not always healthy or beneficial when you need to deal with things that are challenges, are there as a challenge to help push you forward. Now, I often talk about vagus tone breaths in my appointments, but this is basically a type of deep breathing exercise that helps put your body into the opposite of the fight or flight response. So puts you into the relaxation mode that helps with your digestion, that brings about all the normal hormonal reactions that are necessary for your body to relax, replenish, rejuvenate, and repair itself. Okay, the key to doing this exercise is not to just inhale and exhale deep breaths. The key is to have a full big exhale, blowing air out through your mouth. And the two visuals that I use are to either blow into a huge balloon. So imagine blowing into the biggest balloon in order to completely empty your lungs, or imagine blowing out an unlimited number of candles. So a huge cake with lots of candles that you're trying to blow out. So you want to get every bit of air that's in your lungs completely out of there. And that will bring about a natural inhales as your lungs recoil back and naturally expand again to take air in. You want to do this about 6 breaths per minute, so 1 breath per 10 seconds, and do it as often as you need to. So whenever you're feeling stress coming on and you're unable to deal with it, take a couple of big exhales, okay? Remember, you cannot deal with problems from a place of stress. When you're in this fight or flight or freeze mode, you are not going to be responding. You're most likely going to be reacting. However, most times when we're dealing with a stress, we need to respond to that stress. And in order to respond to it, you need to come from a place of calm and relaxation so that you're able to think properly and creatively to come up with a solution. So never react to stress. Try to calm yourself down first and then do your best to respond to it. Now, do what the Japanese do next. What do the Japanese do? Well, they use green tea, matcha green tea specifically, in their tea ceremonies because it's been shown to have meditative benefits. It puts the brain into what's known as alpha brain waves. So it boosts those specific brain waves that help with relaxation and can bring about a deeply calm and relaxed state. And the way you want to use this is this. Let's say on a very stressful day, instead of going for your second or third coffee, which will only add to your nerves and worsen anxiety, go for the calming alpha brain wave boosting effects of green tea, matcha green tea specifically. And this can be found at most health food stores. If not, you might be able to get it at grocery stores as well. It's also very commonly found at coffee shops. However, I would not recommend the lattes as they come with a lot of sugar, which then defeats the benefits of matcha green tea anyways. So buy a container, keep it in your office. You only need half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon per cup of boiling water. And there you have it. Focus, concentration, but also calm and the boosted benefits of the meditative brain waves that matcha green tea has been shown to bring about. When the brain is in the alpha frequency, you're typically very relaxed. For example, when people get a massage, their brains exhibit high concentrations of these alpha brain waves. And if you, however, see a person talking rapidly after a cup of coffee, they're actually in what's known as beta frequency. Beta brain waves are associated with activity and multitasking. But if you want a deeply relaxed and calm but focused state, matcha tea can assist you in achieving that. Now, what is cognitive behavioral therapy? This is a type of therapy that's used in a lot of counseling sessions. Basically, you have an event that happens. It may be stressful, something that has come up that you need to deal with. Now, you obviously the first thing that happens, then you start having certain thoughts around that event. And those thoughts lead to certain emotions that then lead you to behave in a certain way. Now, one way to respond positively to the stressful event is to firstly be mindful of your thoughts around that event. So if you have any ants or automatic negative thoughts, you want to stop those and see how you can reshape your thinking and change then your emotions and your response to it. There are a lot of resources with regards to this aspect, lots of workbooks that you can find at the library or at chapters, um, lots of resources online. But if you're finding that you have a lot of automatic negative thoughts or ants, you need to perhaps see how you can use this behavioral therapy to change some of your um, understanding of events, which come about by your thoughts, and then your emotions, that then leads to your behavior. And that is it for today. So let's go through some of the biggest important points that we covered in the session. You want to practice a non-judgmental and compassionate presence in the moment, to feel your emotions as an observer, to, to notice any tension, stress, or anxiety as a curious observer without judgment, and to not associate who you are with those emotions then. Second, to have a number of go-to self-soothing practices that you can use as a stress reliever to put your body into relaxation mode. Next, you want to be truly okay with the spiral that is life. Try to find out what lessons you may need to learn if you keep landing in the same stairway. So if you keep coming up with against the same obstacles and challenges, perhaps there's a lesson that life is needing to teach you. So again, a curious observer, try to see what is it that you need to do in the present moment as opposed to pushing things away and not dealing with things, which will just bring about more anxiety and more stress for you. Lastly, remember, stress is good and it is healthy. It is what wakes you up in the morning and gives you the needed energy to help you get through whatever it is you need to get through for that day. And lastly, relax. Know that you are on a journey of discovery. Let life reveal itself to you. And remember these words, gratitude, awe, and forgiveness, and see which of these, and maybe all of these, whether you can practice gratitude, awe, and forgiveness the next time you're dealing with a stressor. So as opposed to fighting it or pushing it away, see what it is about that event that you can be grateful for, how you may, as an observer, again, with curiosity, observe the whatever may be awesome about it, and forgive whatever event or whoever you may need to, because anger does not help, although anger is occasionally necessary because it gets us to take action. However, if you are unable to control the situation, then you may just need to forgive. All the best. Have a wonderful week. See you at let's have a chat at our next session. We're going to be talking about the importance of sleep. So I would say this was most likely the heaviest session of the 6. Next week will be quite simple. We'll look at some of the hormones and the biochemistry and why sleep is so important to your health and overall well-being, and why it's protective of chronic disease. All the best.